the applause to hear what I have to say, but thanks. So yeah, I'm David, I'm 34 years old and I'm a freak. I'll explain a bit more about what that means. So today we're going to be talking about superheroes and mental illness. Usually these are two polar opposites, right? Superheroes, this is like people with amazing, positive, extraordinary qualities, right? And you have mental illness, which is like basically the opposite in society's view. So what I want to try is build a bit of a bridge between these two things, right? And I like your help as well. So usually superheroes are also something that society talks about, right? Superman is always on the front page of the newspaper, right? But usually mental illness is not. So to build a bridge between these, we also need to break the taboo around it. And I'm not a big fan of taboos. You probably are not either. So just a quick story to elaborate why. A close friend of mine, he works at a suicide hotline. And so they're starting this school outreach program. They want to go out to schools and talk about suicides and the issues related to it. And there's actually studies showing that if you go out and talk about it, and people don't feel as isolated if you talk about these, everybody feels alone from time to time. But so the first school they go out to, right, that the teachers, yeah, we like the idea, but actually we have this one person in our class and it's a little bit sensitive and we don't want to push the issue, and so like we better not, right? So you see where this is going, right? So this guy's increased like maybe in the risk factor of it, right? And studies show that if you go there and you talk about it, the risk gets decreased like a lot. But because there's this taboo, they're afraid to touch it, right? So they're just leaving him hanging with all this stuff. That's not nice. So I hope you'll actually also help me to get rid of these taboos a bit. So as you can see, as with any sort of humble scientific inquiry, we start with a question, right? It's not an exclamation mark. It's just kind of still to figure out if this is actually the case. So actually, although this contains quite a lot of studies that it's based on, it's also based on a lot of personal experience and reflections. So just before like you guys waste an hour of your time listening to something that might just be relevant for me, I'd like to have people, if you're comfortable with that, also break a little bit. People who have struggled with depression, so raise your hand. Okay, quite a bit. People who have struggled with anxiety. Okay, and people who have this sense in some way, not in an arrogant way, but a sense that they don't have this high filter, and maybe most people do that. They have a higher level of empathy, and they actually can't shut out some of the calls for help that are sometimes in society that other people can't really hear, right? So anyone there having that sense as well. Can you guys please, yeah. And all those who raised their hands for one of those questions, can you please all stand up? Wow, okay, thanks. So, seems like I'm in a perfect spot. Thank you so much for listening to this. I thought it would be too big without. So, on the overview here. So it actually starts out with my own search for superpowers, right? And what I found instead is what we'll be looking at, and how I sort of ended up actually being fond of what I found in the end. And my main point, finally, after dragging you through all that, and how a mirror looks like to a normie. And actually, we have like one guy, I'm not going to single you out, but that's already too late, that how a mirror looks like to a normie has always been interesting for me. And origins of a freak, like, each superhero has their origin story, and I'll share a bit about mine. And then I have a favor to ask while I have all you great, very sensitive and gullible people in the room. And actually, while I have you, I got another favor to ask as well, so you know there'll be some homework. And then I'm going to get you through a little bit of a superpower academy session, just so you feel like you get something out of this as well. So, I've always been super fascinated by superpowers and superheroes. It's always been a thing. Like, I've watched all the Marvel movies and all that. And so my psychiatrist thinks it's probably maybe related to an inflated sense of self. But he's an amateur, and I think if anybody would know it, would be me. I studied philosophy for 10 years, and my intellect is far superior to his. So, I think there's superpowers. This is actually the first thing I was like, okay, what's special about me? You need to start out with something that's not a lot of other people have, right? So I stumbled on this. that one, this science showing that, okay, gingers have superpowers, super interesting. I'm gonna look into that. Screw my psychiatrist. So it's 2% of the population, which is not a lot, right? But makes me quite special. Actually, it's a genetic mutation, right? Super interesting. I don't think X-Men here. So it's good stuff. And actually, they found gingers, they can transform sun rays into vitamin D more rapidly than other people. Super interesting, right? And then I'm thinking about it for a little longer. I'm like, wait. Now I'm like, I'm not only ginger, I'm also bald. And like my superpower, my genetic superpower, something that only activates when I'm outside in the sun. I looked that up. That's like not a superpower. That's a little definition of a curse, right? Imagine this like a train running in the desert. These poor people tied to the train tracks, and the guy yells, "Don't worry, Captain Sunburn will save us." I'm like, okay, that's actually a little bit depressing, but I'm pretty stubborn, so I kept going. I'm like, okay, vegans. Yeah, that's definitely, there's some superpowers here, and I can see a lot of people nodding. Also around 2% of the population again. Pretty cool, maybe growing, maybe not. And so I found a lot of studies looking into this, and there's like this little scientific caveat. These studies are primarily done on vegetarians, right? So I think it's just because we haven't been, like, vegans are an even smaller group, there haven't been a lot of studies specifically. But just in my own experience working in this movement for a while, I haven't really found anything leading me to believe that vegetarians or vegans are less freaky than vegetarians. So for the purpose of this talk, and you can always argue, I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that this also relates to vegans as well. So vegan superpowers, let's look into it. And this is one study, there's quite a few. Vegetarians report more depression, anxiety, and stress. Okay, well that's kind of slightly depressing, but let's push on. Vegetarians have nearly twice the rates of depression, anxiety disorders, and somatic form disorders as well. Okay, nice. Vegetarians are about twice as likely to suffer from mental illness, such as anxiety and depression. The list of studies actually goes on quite a bit. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, nice. So not ginger and vegan, that's like winning the superhero lottery every single day. But then I got stubborn, right? Okay, because this is maybe my last chance at superpowers, man. I'm growing old. So there has to be something, they're saving the world, these vegans, there has to be something. So look into it. Actually, it's interesting. Kind of always ask what comes first, the hen or the egg. So what comes first, veganism or depression, right? Because in a lot of ways we can see that when we choose to lead a vegan diet, right, it can cause isolation and depression, so it can come from that, right? And I think that could definitely be true, but actually when we look into it, there's a study showing that many vegetarians, they report better well-being and happiness after making the switch, right? They also have the study where they split omnivores into 3 types here, meat, pescatarian, and vegetarian diets for a trial period. And those with the vegetarian diet actually reported afterwards that they had less stress, tension, and anxiety. You probably also know this empowerment feeling of eating tofu. So average people, another study here, saying that average age that people went vegetarian in this study was 30. The average age that depression set in was 18 to 34. Which is interesting when you kind of look around, right? So it's likely that this increased sensitivity actually precedes and prompts the choice to go vegan, right? It comes before. So in one way, you could actually look at it as one of the causes because we're highly sensitive. That's why we choose the diet. That becomes a little bit less depressing in some ways. So this is sort of one of the key questions I ask as well. Looking into, okay, where does this come from? What's this relation between sensitivity and superpowers? So traumatic events, this is also from a study, increase the risk of depression, but there's also evidence that adversity can lead to post-traumatic growth, including increased compassion and pro-social behavior. And results across samples measures show that on average, adults who reported experiencing a traumatic event in childhood had elevated empathy levels compared to adults who didn't experience a traumatic event. Further, the severity of the trauma correlated positively with various components of empathy, right? So you see that, like, if you have some sort of trauma, or it could not be, you could just be highly sensitive, right? And this is just a quote from one of my favorite authors, Andrew Solomon. He wrote a book called The Noonday Demon. It's about depression. Actually, puts this up really nicely. If you banish the dragons, you banish the heroes, right? A lot of people become who they are through adversity. So I really like that take on it. And now we're getting somewhere, right, when it comes to superpowers. Also said in another way, it's Marshall Rosenberg, inventor of nonviolent communication, and one of the leading experts on everything related these entities that, yeah, it kind of makes sense, just on a common sense level. Anyone who's experienced trauma or loss are a lot more empathetic to people or other beings who are experiencing it, right? So actually, is this true for vegans as well? Is there like a higher capacity for compassion amongst us? There's actually a few studies to correlate with that, maybe also your own experience. Vegetarians and vegans score higher on empathy scores in these two studies than omnivores. Vegetarians are far more likely to work for really shitty salary, and vegetarians are likely to value clear harmony, equality, gender inequality, and social justice, right? So it kind of broadens out a lot more, this thing. So, interesting stuff. This is sort of the main, my superhero hypothesis that I'm looking into this that I sort of developed. I'm just going to hang there for a bit, I'll also read up. It's the role of a healthy psyche to uphold a positive self-image. Therefore, moral progress rarely comes from those with a healthy psyche, right? So what's this role that we play here? Kind of like stand there. So a healthy psyche, so our tale of norms and normies, so you can relate as well. Beliefs follow behavior. A lot of you guys have probably read your bias books and all that. There's a lot of studies showing, right? So one main aim of our psyche is to preserve our well-being and survival. And to secure the above, it's very vital to have a positive self-image. So our psyche therefore constructs and maintains a suitable system of beliefs that are in harmony with our vital need for a positive self-image. That kind of makes sense, right? Ergo, a healthy psyche can stand in the way of moral progress. So this is kind of what a mirror looks like to a normal right? They look there at somebody criticized, like you shouldn't be wife, you shouldn't have slaves, you shouldn't eat animals. They look in the mirror, and the whole society mirroring back to them. No, it must be this vegan freak who's wrong, right? And while I say that, because I got a call from my lawyer, and he's a little bit tense when I said I would be speaking about this. So this is not to like say that there's this is a license, like okay to go out and traumatize yourself as much as possible. Like stop watching all those horror movies with animals being killed, like all that trauma porn. That's not what you should be doing. And another note, because I see some of you trying to wiggle your way out of it. It's also like, don't go out and traumatize other people, at least. It's not like a license to do that. My lawyer would kill me if like a lot of people running out there, like, yeah, I saw this philosopher give a talk about how like, to accelerate moral progress, to like accumulate as much trauma as possible. That's really not the case, though. Like, don't do that at home. I think the fact that you're here at this conference, you probably already got it, right? Another note as well, on the use of the term normies, you know. So you probably have raise of hand. Who here has seen Melanie Joy's TED Talk, where she kind of says, okay, the vegan is always the underdog, so she came up with this term carnist to sort of fight back at oppression. Who's seen that? Yeah, no, because that's not the talk she gave, right? So carnism is a term to understand why people eat the way they do, right? Why they construct this suitable system of beliefs to uphold their behavior, right? It's not a way to like get that bumper sticker like screw all carnists or something like that, right? So that's really not the case. And the same when I talk about healthy psyche, it's not a way to like, oh, it's always normal people. Maybe that's not that much of a dish, but anyway, the point here is, and yeah, I think you get it, right? But I knew you guys are going to do it anyway, so I just came up with the term normie because it fits. You're going to be bashing anyways. So that was about the healthy psyche, how this guy over here operates. I'll apologize afterwards, but not already too late. So you all know this, right? The law of diffusion of innovation, right? So you have the innovators, right? The first ones, and this is when it relates to technological innovations of society, like the smartphone, classic example. There's the ones who get it the first. Christopher, always pushing the limit with that. I always inherit a lot of his smartphone. Good. But then you have the early adopters who then later get it, and then probably retirees and all that on that end. So that's how technological innovation proceeds. And we'll actually talk a little bit more about what we can learn from this specifically. So here, the innovators are the nerds, right? So then you have ethical innovations, right? This is also really important in society. Most of us would argue, right? New principles, new ways of forming and shaping society, of how we conduct ourselves, right? It's not just about technology, progress in our society. So here with the innovators, right? It's all the freaks, to use the technically established term, that are sort of driving these highly sensitive people. So maybe you could look at that like this. You have sociopath, psychopath on one end of the scale, and then you sort of have the normies in the middle, and then you have empath or highly sensitive people to some degree. I'm not going to get too technical with that, but I didn't read up on it. So, another beautiful way of saying this, favorite quote of mine, to sort of make it a bit more poetic. A dreamer is one who can only find his way by moonlight, and his punishment is that he sees the world, the dawn before the rest of the world, right? So there's this ancient tale from Greece about this woman who was given this divine gift of the gods to see the future, but they also made her mute, so she couldn't communicate to the rest of the world. Maybe you guys can relate. And so one thing that we always get, right, is accusation of disneyfication. Well, you guys are just soft, you know, tough up, man, or whatever it is these days. But I think that's, like, they're getting it wrong, right? There's this Buddhist quote, love and compassion are necessities. They're not luxuries, you know? Humanity cannot survive without them. You know? Like, technology is nothing without guided by compassion. Martin Luther King said, like, the tragedy of today is we have guided missiles and misguided men, right? So there's nothing there if we're not driving it. It's really important to survive. Like, don't mistake it for anything. So the good news is we're all superheroes, right? The bad news is that, like, we're not those able-bodied, able-minded types. We're probably more like these guys, right? Probably one of my favorite things. Yeah, you know that guy. I see that people. So it's kind of like, is it in Batman? Like, we're not the hero the world deserves. We're the one that needs, right? So I'll share a bit of my own story here. I'm running good on time, actually. We have a lot of time, but cool. So, growing up, I don't want to give the impression that I had a really shitty childhood or anything. It's not like I was like living out of a dumpster or anything. But actually, so a bit of a sad thing, if you will. I'm not sure if that's how I construe the narrative anymore. Growing up, my parents and my mom and dad have been divorced like 8 to 9 times growing up. So my mother's manic depressive schizophrenic. So she kind of does this pendulum, right, where she's in her depressive state. Maybe you know some people who are a bit bipolar or something, depressed, and then really swinging up to this really manic, where she kind of projects a lot of her accumulated sort of insecurities and failures as she sees it as her mom being depressed and not being able to play with us and all that. And then she projects it on my dad, so she definitely doesn't want to live with this guy. She lives in a bit of a fantasy world, right? So for me, that meant growing up a lot faster, having to reflect on a lot of things that kids my age didn't do, so grow a lot more emotionally independent and all that. So in that sense, now I actually see it as one of my main strengths, I would say. Then when I was like 20, I encountered this concept called latent inhibition. And it's basically the thing that auto-filters your world, right? So imagine a big football stadium, and you have all these people, there's 20,000 people in the stadium, right? And you have just a few rows down there, you have people almost getting into a fight, right? You have a guy yelling popcorn over there, and a guy spilling beer close to you. Now on the other side, there's like 10,000 people doing that wave thing they love doing. And all the while, most people are just focused on 2 guys running after a leather ball, we hope, like 200 meters in front of me. All this is auto-sorted. It's not really relevant. So the subconscious part is not, right? Then there are people with lower latent inhibition, a lot lower. So this filter is not there to auto-filter all that. So I had a sense when I was younger that normal people or people around me, every second of reality was like a puzzle piece given to them, like 4 puzzle pieces. It's very easy, you know, they're all corner pieces. That's how it looked like from the outside as well, at least. But for me, I had this sense like I was throwing like 1,000 puzzle pieces in my face every second. I had to, put them up in a nice way and everything. I didn't always construe it in the most positive way, I'd say. But actually learning a lot more about psychology, philosophy, how to deal with yourself, mindfulness, all these things. Now I see like, okay, I have all these puzzle pieces coming at me. Like every second, there's so much creativity. I have access to so much more of the world. So I feel actually very blessed. Probably one of the reasons I'm standing here talking to you. So actually, I think there's something really, really positive coming out of that. Oh, and so we'll actually be talking a bit about this Superhero Academy training that I promised you, because there's this saying, always put the white belt on. So if you know judo, the martial art, right? So the guy who invented this, when he died, naturally, he was like most highly decorated with like black belt with all the notches and stuff. So he was like the highest within that. But he explicitly instructed his students, so when he dies, he wants to be buried with the white belt on. You know, there's always more to learn. I think that's a very, very inspiring story. And also when you look at superheroes, right? when they mess up a bit in the middle, in the beginning of the movie, especially Spider-Man, right? He doesn't really get it until Uncle Ben kind of comes in and moralizes him. So there's always humble beginnings, and I think a lot of us probably feel similar to what I described here. And we need to sort of learn from there. We're not already there. There's always more to learn, in my opinion. And if we've been given this greater capacity for compassion, this is what drives us to get work for certain types of values and do these amazing things and connect a lot more. We get a lot more out of society. I at least feel like that, a little bit more woke. So my main favor here to ask is that we actually start using this gift we have, which I think actually I tend to see in a lot of people around me, that we should start using this compassion towards others in the group. And you probably have a few examples of this not being the case. But actually, I think we as sort of the drivers of moral progress, if you will, of society, right? It's interesting. A lot of people here in the vegan movement, it's not just like a single cause, right? People don't just care about animals, that's it, right? For most people, it's all these things that they keep coming in, all these new things. We start talking about gender equality, food justice, all these, like, there's a lot of intersectionality going on, right? And it's the same with Christopher and the rest of the nerds, I think, when we can actually look a bit at how technology evolved, right? So when you get the first smartphone, I remember Christopher coming home with it, like on a little backpack, like, this is so awesome. I can call my only friend over there in Northern Jutland, and he also has one, and super proud, right? But now everybody has a smartphone this size, and there's incremental innovation. So it's not really a lot. They get a better camera or something, and they have way higher price, and some still fall for it. But the point here is, I think this way that the market is iterating, right? He's always super happy when he gets a new tool, right? The way the market iterates is by, it throws a product out there to solve some issue that they think the consumer has. And smart touchscreens, way smarter way for people to communicate and have everything in one place. And I think we should look a bit at what we're discussing here. It's we're not discussing these stone tablets that Moses was handed down from God above, right? We're actually discussing a lot of things. How do we deal with insects? How do we deal with intersectionality? What should we prioritize higher, and how can they go together in harmony, right? So we get all these things in, and we need to be discussing it a lot more. And I think we need to use our compassion when we discuss these things, right? Because we can't, if we get super pissed at each other every time we bring up a new thing. Jan was also talking about innovation, don't get too attached to the ideas, Aristotle said it's the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without having to believe in it, right? So it's put it up there and let's discuss it with less ego. I think we could be better at this, and I think we have a huge responsibility to each other in the movement. Also, just psychological burnout and all these other things. So it's a little favor to ask with while I have you and your out here. Another favor to ask: compassion towards those people who still consume animal products. There's still a few around here in Warsaw as well. Because I told it to Tobias Leonard had this meme once. It really stuck with me. I really liked it. What are the true tests of compassion? It's not how we treat suffering, those who are suffering most in society. Sorry, I didn't speak that well with me, apparently, I wrote it wrong. But how we treat those causing the most suffering in society, right? I'll let that sink in a bit. So there's this a monk, Buddhist monk, held captive for many years. And then after he came out, he was asked, were you ever afraid in the cell there? He said, yeah, at some point I actually was afraid I would lose compassion for my captors. This is maybe setting the bar a bit high for a lot of people here as well, but I agree. But I think it's very admirable to actually keep that in. And even on a strategic level, if you're more compassionate towards people, you can have your way with them even more. Or it's and it's also just for our own being, right? Also Nelson Mandela said when he's been in political activity for a long time, he came out of prison and he said, I knew that if I didn't leave behind me the hatred, the bitterness, and the sadness, I would always stay in prison, right? He also said, while we're quoting, which I like, that resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it kills your enemies, right? So don't let all those shitty emotions in. You're not going to be happy about it. You're not going to be more efficient in a way there. So you all know this, right? No excuse for animal abuse. Who here agrees with it, philosophically? Yeah, no, you're kind of scared of raising your hand. I raised it as well. So philosophically, yes. And what it means for most of us here is don't eat them, right? Because they're being slaughtered and maimed and all that before that. But actually, philosophically, yes, I agree. You shouldn't. But when you talk with people eating meat, I'm like, that's not the case. They have like thousands of excuses. Like this, yeah, you can all name them, you probably heard them. So here the point is, when we speak compassionately with people, I think it's a really important distinction here. Empathy, having empathy with me, does not mean agreeing with, does not mean condoning. It just means simply understanding compassionately. For a lot of people here who are not born vegan, this concept I think twice also uses veganism, right? This thing where you kind of completely disconnect with your former identity, even though you maybe ate meat like a month ago, and I'm like, how can you do that? I'm like, whoa, okay, something happened there. That's interesting. I understand the need to sort of alienate ourselves from past things, but I think we should actually embrace it. This is one way, like when people are saying, I couldn't live without cheese, and we probably felt that at some point. So actually going in there, like embracing it and going in and saying, okay, we know that, we can relate to that a lot, really, really well. Also again, Marshall Rosenberg said, empathy is a respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. It's a respectful understanding, right? Instead of offering empathy, we often have a strong urge to give advice or reassurance and to explain our own position or feeling, right? You probably know that kind of urges up. Yeah, climate change and 14.5% comes from livestock and blah, blah. Empathy, however, calls upon us to empty our mind and listen to others with our whole being. Just listen to that all. And I think a lot of it has the sense that people are, and like, someone's wrong on the internet. You just kind of want to go there and poke it. Internet, I think that's just, I just don't do that personally, but it can be a good thing if you have the time and all that. But when he was talking with some, sometimes you just gotta let them sort of run out of gas, because they're raising their voice for the same reason here, right? They want to say their things, so just listen compassionately, nod, and afterwards you can start manipulating, right? So I think we have this sense that if we're not going in correcting every thing people say when they give a statement, right? We give a lot of unsolicited advice and facts, and just listen and kind of let them get that. And if they feel really, really listened to, they will probably listen a lot better and more wholeheartedly than you will, right? There's this, and the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of the main things is it says, first seek to understand, then to be understood. You can't really just force it in there. So, just to sort of wrap up that Superhero Academy, so like I was just on a 10-day retreat and we have this method of exercise, and for a lot of you, it's gonna get really freaky. But I hope for me, it works a lot. It's not the same maybe for you, but it's just so you work for your certificate of this week that we are about to enter. So it means compassion, loving kindness meditation. So I would actually like, no, I'm not gonna do anything weird. I'd like you all to close your eyes and think of a close friend, maybe 2 friends that are getting married, right? Super happy. And you just know it's, you know it's the right thing for them. And just send them some like good, loving thoughts. Like that you can really be happy for them, right? That's just really nice. They found love and all that. Just be with that for a little moment. Thank you. That's all. And you're welcome to practice afterwards, of course, alone. But now I'd like you to think of someone that really, when you think of them, you cleanse up your whole body, right? It could be someone yelling at you on the street like a stranger, or it can be Trump. Right? Or it could be this guy who's been calling you freaks in more ways than one for about 30 minutes. So just pick one where you really feel yourself tensing up, right? Super annoying inside. And then there's this sort of mantra that we did at this retreat. It goes like this: may all beings be happy, be peaceful, be liberated. And then you kind of do that 3 times. I like you sit with this arch nemesis of yours, and then sort of direct those thoughts towards this person, right? May all beings be happy, be peaceful, be liberated. And think about what it means for a second, actually. If all beings are happy, if all beings are happy, if they're not super sexually frustrated, maybe we wouldn't have incels, right? Or if they're really, really happy, they usually give a lot more love around, right? If they're peaceful with themselves, they're not seeking to create war, right? So, and if they are liberated, quote unquote, in this sort of Buddhist mythology, that means just being free from the shackles of your ego and mind, right? So actually think that through for a minute and think like if you're thinking of Trump and he was actually peaceful, liberated and happy, he'd probably be a vegan feminist activist sitting up there with us. That's what I truly believe. I don't think he's there yet, maybe a few more karmic cycles for him. And the third one, the second sort of mantra we do is, may I develop love, compassionate love, patient love, endless love. To sort of see, okay, this is actually the capacity that we should be experiencing. So yeah, that was kind of it for this exercise. Another thing for like homework for the Superhero Academy is actually reading a Nonviolent Communication, a really amazing book on empathy and how you can use that. Then the conclusion, actually, I think we're wrapping up in pretty good time. I'd love to have more discussion and pretty good feedback. So first thing, that's completely overrated. I found that if you are and you think you should be spending time, don't. I looked it up. So second, there's a correlation between illnesses and veganism/vegetarianism. Studies indicate that this increased sensitivity actually precedes and prompts choice. Right? So we're sensitive before. This is a really important distinction. Vegans likely have a higher capacity for compassion due to sensitivity. This can come from a trauma experience, like a childhood thing or whatever, or just being super, like for genetic reasons or whatnot. So freak is actually where you take these two polar opposites, superheroes and mental illness, and they come together in a really interesting, creepy way. So my conclusion is we should embrace and continue to grow the superpower of us. I think that's truly what we really can offer the world. So I'd like to end off by this quote that I really like from Leonard Doyle Nelson, also an author of Depression, books on depression. I understand now that I'm not a mess, but a deeply feeling person in a messy world. I explain that now when someone asks me why I cry so often. I say the same reason I laugh so often, because I'm paying attention. So on behalf of the planet, the people on it, and all the animals, and from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank you all for paying attention. And of course, you get your welcome to the Freak League. In America, they would say, like, give yourself a big round of applause. So, so, any questions or haters or anything there?
Hello. Yeah. Thank you for the talk, David. I think it's really important to the point you made of vegans being kind of special and kind of remembering this when you're trying to get others to make that connection. That there may be like we might be thinking that I saw one picture or one video and that maybe go vegan like overnight, and not everyone is like that. So do you have any like tips on how to talk to non-vegans?
That's a really good to the point question, and I think it's an interesting point. Right, we're actually seeing some meat companies launching like vegan burgers and these kinds of things. Right? And we all know the success of this meat success or market is based on the similarity to meat, actually, right? So I saw this one phrase from a meat company and said like plants are plants and meat are meat, and we're gonna make these vegan burger things. And like they're also sort of trapped a bit in their own mindset, right? I think we can really easily become this, right? So Mike Leonard has this principle, Yana, you are not your audience. I think that's really important. For me, I think I just keep an awareness of it when I'm speaking with people. They are definitely not my audience in a lot of ways, right? Or I'm not my audience, but they are, yeah. And so, yeah. Just what motivates them in a compassionate way. I think it's really important. And it's sort of a bit of a psychological maneuver you have to make there. When I started with the Meat Free Mondays 5 years ago, and that's just like a task I was handed over, a volunteer project in the beginning by close friend and ally of mine. And first, like, I was just studying philosophy. My bachelor's thesis was called The Moral Contract in Sound of Clause and Booths, and had all these arguments from like 10,000 years before Christ and all that ready. And I'm like, oh, Meat Free Mondays, but I want to do animal rights. I don't want to spread some Wahrheit, as they say in Germany. But actually, like when I look at myself, there's this really interesting phenomenon about me that you might be able to recognize. If I put up my jogging clothes next to my bed in the evening, I'm far more likely to go jogging in the morning, right? That's not very, it's like, I know I should be jogging for various reasons, not the proximity that my smelly shoes have to my bed, right? So we're just guys that we like to look at ourselves as fallen angels, even though we're upright monkeys, right? divine aspiration, but also a lot of evolutionary garbage. Right? I think it's important to look at yourself sometimes as this non-complete being, but construction in progress, I would say. That helps me a lot. And then I also just love giving fun things where I can see like, oh, this is something that motivates them, right? This is really something that that they are passionate about, right? Yeah.
Any questions?
I'll be around.
Yeah, I guess there won't be any like short answers to this, but anyway, I will try. Do you have like kind of a short, good advice about how to handle oneself and people in the activist groups who get depressed by not making the progress we want or just having a talk with a person who don't take in the course like at all. So really how to handle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think Belly probably also has a lot to study psychology. Yet, I always say, like, are you talking about yourself or others? Right?
Well, it was two parts.
Yeah. So on the self part, because it's interesting, right? There's this voice inside. Marshall Rosenberg calls it jackal sometimes, jack voice. That if my friend is suffering, breakup or whatever, usually you go there, you're a good friend. You give them all the good advice. But when they're saying, I can't perform, I'm really messing up with the Zen rights work, usually you don't go and like, yeah, you are, you suck. You know, that's not your first instinct, right? Like motivate them. You're like, you actually understand it quite intuitively. You can relate to it. So you give them a lot of nice compassionate advice. But when there's the personal mirror, you know, there's kind of this inside, there's this extra layer of reflection you have to get through. I think it's really important to negotiate with these voices inside, right? There's this beautiful allegory about two wolves, right? So there's this old grandpa who's telling his grandchildren about how in each person's inner sides, there's these two wolves battling. One is the ego, greed, hatred, bitterness. The other is love, compassion, kindness. And then after he finishes the story, his young little son asks, grandpa, which one wins? He says, the one you feed, right? So you got to start feeding that, and it will grow in momentum. It's very important to be compassionate inwards as well. And I think sometimes you got to fill that cup, even though that's egotistical or something like that. It's really important to fill that up because it just starts flowing a lot more to others. Really understanding. I think sometimes you can, there's a lot of good psychology out there, but you can sort of sometimes get a bit beneath what all this, they have their thought, threat mail. So I always imagine this hamster going around. It's like, oh, it's that voice going around. And you can sort of get in there and you're saying, oh, maybe that's not what you should be doing to yourself. Though. Take it a higher, like a one reflection level higher up and get to what you're actually doing. This is not what you should be doing. You want to be a good friend to yourself like you are to others. Yeah, I hope that sort of answers it. Okay, I was just getting off.
Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation. The next one starts in 10 minutes. So, here.